Hello, my name is Ryan East, and I'm in English 216 Hunting and Fishing Literature with Michael Martin. And today I will be doing an oral presentation on Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. I'm using the first Scribner Trade paperback edition 2003. The first passage I would like to talk about today is on page 11, and it says, "They sat on the terrace, and many of the fishermen made fun of the old man, and he was not angry. Others of the older fishermen looked at him and were sad, but they did not show it, and they spoke politely about the current and the depth at which they had drifted their lines at, and the steady good weather, and what they had seen. The successful fishermen of the day were already in and had butchered their marlin out and carried them laid full length across two planks, with two men staggering at the end of each plank, to the fish house where they were waited for the ice truck to carry them to the market in Havana. Those who had caught sharks had taken them to the shark factory on the other side of the cove, where they were hoisted on a block and tackled, their livers removed, their fins cut off, and their hides skinned out, and their flesh cut into strips for salting. When the wind was in the east, a smell came across the harbor from the shark factory, but today there was only a faint edge of the odor because the wind had backed into the north and then dropped off, and it was pleasant and sunny on the terrace. There's one interesting quote I'd like to talk about, which is the first sentence of that passage. They sat on the terrace, and many of the fishermen made fun of the old man, and he was not angry. Others of the older fishermen looked at him and were sad. What's interesting about this quote, it kind of shows that the terrace is more than just a bar in that city, that it's like a second home to those fishermen in that village, that's their gathering place. And in this passage, Hemingway stays true to his style of writing. It's short, simple, to the point, nothing extra, and he's just gonna say what he means to say and get out. Everything's really short and choppy. The second passage I'd like to talk about is on page 49 and 50, paragraphs 2 and 3. He remembered the time that he had hooked one of a pair of marlin. The male fish always let the female fish feed first, and the hooked fish, the female, made a wild, panic-stricken, despaired fight that soon exhausted her. And all the time the male had stayed with her, crossing the line and circling with her on the surface. He had stayed so close to the old man. The old man was afraid he would cut the line with his tail, which was sharp as a scythe and almost of that size and shape. When the old man had gaffed her and clubbed her, holding the reaper bill with its sandpaper edge and clubbing her across the top of her head until her color turned to a color almost like the back of the mirrors, and then with the boy's aid hoisted her aboard. The male fish had stayed by the side of the boat. Then, while the old man was clearing the lines and preparing the harpoon, the male fish jumped high into the air beside the boat to see where the female was, and then went down deep. His lavender wings, that were his pectoral fins, spread wide, and all of his wide lavender stripes showing. He was beautiful, the old man remembered, and he had stayed. That was the saddest thing I ever saw with them, the old man thought. Um, the paragraph I'd like to talk about was, the quote that I would like to talk about in this passage would be the second sentence where it says, "The male fish always let the female fish feed first, and the hooked fish, the female, made a wild, panic-stricken, despair fight that soon exhausted her. All the time, the male had stayed with her." Uh, I kind of take this as to be a piece of symbolism that shows that the man and the boy you can kind of see the man and the boy in the two Marlin. The boy being the male Marlin who was looking out for the female and stayed with them and stayed loyal to him the whole time. Because in the story, the man goes fishing for 84 days without catching a single fish, and the boy stays loyal to him and kind of shows his love for him by making sure he has everything that he needs and stays with him and makes sure he's taken care of. just like the male fish did for the female marlin. And then he kind of gets a bit more descriptive using words like lavender stripes, his wings, his pectoral fins. He kind of sets up more of a imagery for you, like he describes it better, while all still using his short, choppy, simple prose to where he's to the point and out of there. The last passage I'd like to talk about is on page 116 and 117, paragraphs 4 through 8. It starts off, "Don't be silly," he said aloud, "and keep awake and steer. You may have much luck. I'd like to buy some if there's any place they sell it," he said. "What could I buy it with?" he asked himself. "Could I buy it with a lost harpoon and a broken knife and two bad hands?" "You might," he said. "You tried to buy it with 84 days at sea. They nearly sold it to you, too." "I must not think nonsense," he thought. "Luck is a thing that comes in many forms, and who can recognize her? I would take some, though, in any form, and pay what they asked. I wish I could see the glow from the lights," he thought. "I wish too many things, but that is the thing I wish for now." He tried to settle more comfortably and stare, and from his pain he knew he was not dead. I like to talk about a specific quote. Uh, Paragraph 4 or 3, he says, "You might," he said. "You tried to buy with 84 days at sea. They nearly sold it to you, too." I kind of think of that as just really bad luck. Coincidentally, he doesn't fish. He doesn't catch a fish for 48 days, and then he catches this monster marlin, the dream marlin, what he's always been after, and he fights it for 3 days, and he finally catches it. And when he does, he finally feels a little bit of luck on his side. And when he's bringing it into the fish market and bringing it home, the sharks eat it and they take away all that luck that has been brought with him the whole time. And that just doesn't, it is quite, it's not funny, but it's just the way that things had turned out for him to be unlucky.